Good afternoon and welcome to episode 3, I think, of Diary of a Sober CEO. My name's Jason Baker. This is actually our second take, so I'm a bit warmer now. And in the studio here today, and it's our first in-person podcast. I'm really excited. We've got Sam Delaney, author, journalist, and broadcaster. Did I say that? Broadcaster, journalist, and author. Yeah. But you do lots of other stuff as well. You'll come to that in a minute. Yeah. And then we've got Ben Williams, good friend of mine. I was actually watching, what was I watching last night? Watching one of the Mafia films. Good friend of mine. He's a friend of mine.
Friend of ours. That's
and
Donnie
a friend
Brasco.
of ours.
Donnie
Brasco. What film was that?
Donnie Brasco.
Donnie Brasco.
Yes.
Yeah, I was watching that last night. And and then in the background here, we've got Matt Cotton, who's looking after us from a film and video and production perspective. I'm really excited. A little bit nervous, actually, if I'm really honest. You know, a little bit nervous. It's like first in person. But Sam, thank you very much for joining us today. I can imagine you've got really busy over the last year.
I have got really busy. It's been a busy time because the book came out in February, and thankfully it's had a lot of attention. I've been doing a lot of publicity, a lot of more content around it. Huge number of messages coming in all the time, and it's just opened up new doors for me, really. And I'm really excited because the book was about mental health. I've been a journalist for like 28 years now, and I've done everything from politics to football to pop music. But this sort of very personal, vulnerable stuff is very new to me.
Yeah.
And so I was very nervous, despite the fact I've been putting myself out there for 28 years. I was extremely nervous about this because it was so personal. But the response has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm loving it. And it's allowed me to start doing more stuff in that kind of mental health space, which I really enjoy because you know what it's like. You know yourself. It's all about passing it on, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, and I'm grateful that you, it sounds terrible, but I'm grateful that you, because we need more people who are public, in the public eye. We need more people that are prepared. You know, the first person for me actually was Stormzy. That was the first person really who even though I'm not into, you know, I'm not really in that generation. I'm an old fart, but it was when he opened up and he gave a kind of, if I think actually paved the way a little bit. You know, it's certainly in the UK about just being open about mental health, and it might, you know, or from my perspective anyway. You know, I just noticed it more. You know, and we need more people of influence to be open about, you know, struggles with mental health. So Ben, and we're going to go over to Ben and just ask Ben. Ben, we know each other through you know, being in the Brighton. I've actually only met you recently, haven't I?
Being in the Brighton recovery scene.
That's it. You basically opened up, and I knew this was going to be a special moment.
Yeah. So I've never like publicly admitted that I'm in recovery, not for any sort of silly reason, but it's been quite private up until now, and I think a lot more needs to be talked about in terms of recovery in the workplace, which is what we'll get onto with Recovery Confidence that you and I are working on. But I sent an email to Sam because I'm on your Substack sort of mail out, and you'd done a call out for, you know, is anyone in the community doing anything in the workplace? And I shot you an email and I thought, I'll just give it a punt. I've just met this lovely guy called Jason. We're doing Recovery Confidence. Shot you an email, and a couple of weeks later you came back and you were like, oh, I'm really sorry, I've taken 2 weeks. I was like, no, don't worry about it.
You just responded.
You responded, mate. That's good. And here we are all today. And I think, I'm looking forward to kind of getting stuck in about not just the general topic of like mental health, but like specifically addiction in the workplace, and we'll get into that. And like Sam, I came through the media but I came through dirty ad sales. So we were the people that were kind of setting the ad pages so we could fund your expense account.
You're right to think that I am not hostile, but sniffy towards ad sales.
But to be fair, I am sniffy most of the time anyway.
But we're all sniffy. That's the bloody problem. I had some bad experience with ad sales. My first job in journalism, I won't tell the full story now, but my first ever job in proper consumer magazines, I started as work experience, and they didn't have a desk for me in the editorial room. So they said, you're going to have to sit over there with those guys. And I looked at all these people in suits who sounded much louder and posher than the editorial people. And they said, you got to sit with them. And I said, who are they? And they said, the ad sales people. I said, what's that? And they sort of explained. And they said, don't worry, we'll find your desk eventually, but for now, sit with them. So I sat with these lads who were, I do think they were in and out of the toilet a lot. And they were all they talked about was where they were booking tables for lunch, right?
Yeah.
And they came back from lunch like off their tits. And I was a callow youth, but I talked back to them a lot, which they were surprised by. But I think they liked. But one day, one of them, who is now, I think, bloody hell, you might even know him, because I think he became quite senior sort of publishing figure. He came back and I don't know where he got it, but he had a huge bit of like polystyrene, like a plank of it, like 5 foot and like half a foot deep. And he ran up behind me off his tits from being out for Spence's lunch, right?
Yeah.
And just smacked me round the back of the head with it, right? As hard as he could. Wild-eyed. My head practically hit the desk, snapped over my head. And I just went like full West Ham at him. I jumped out of my desk and like went for him. Then the boss from the editorial department had to come over and break it up and was like, mate, I said, like, he's just
You're like a junior, but you've
he's
just
like,
started
your
working,
work experience.
Oh
I've
my
sat you
God.
over there with the ad team. No, I look round and you're like attacking one of them and swearing. And I was like, yeah, he hit me over the head. He goes, what with? I go, a bit of polystyrene. He's going, a bit of fucking polystyrene. That doesn't hurt. I said, you should have seen the size of it.
It was a brick.
So that was my introduction to journalism, basically. And ever since, I have had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about ad sales.
So to get you guys sitting next to each other is like
Yeah.
really quite special. It's really quite special. But you obviously come through the ad sales route, and I've come through the ad sales route.
Yeah.
Well, commercial basically, but it was, and I'm really, really publicly open about my recovery from addiction, right? And it's I've made it a thing, but I don't know. Was it, the fact that there was free lunches and in the ad sales market and it was promoted? I was in the army for 9 years, so was it was it that part of it, or was it my upbringing? Actually, I don't know, and I don't care. Actually, I at some point in my drinking career, I lost. I stepped over a line, if you like, and it's a whole other thing. I mean, actually, I'm going to try and do less talking. Funny, the second my second guest, Ollie Lewis, the difference, and Matt was involved in editing that, but the difference in the amount of talking that I did in the second one than I did the first one, it's night and day. Actually, it's mostly the guests, so I'm going to shut up and hear from my guests. And we are going to come on to all the different subjects. What I'd love to hear is what was the pivot point for each of you. If we start with you, Sam, what was the pivot point when you kind of like, this is not working. My mental health is and you've been very public about it, right? Yeah. Where was that point where you kind of knew things weren't great, basically?
Well, I sometimes think when you talk to people who aren't in recovery, they think they kind of want to.
Yeah, just to clarify, you are in recovery.
I'm in recovery,
right? And
yeah,
I want to get that, so that
I've
we're
been
very clear about what we're talking about.
It'll be 8 years this coming
Amazing.
June, and it's wonderful, but it's been a journey. It wasn't like a wonderful overnight. I still look back on my first couple of years and think, oh my God, I was like just as insane. But start raving sober, as they call it. But I mean, people who aren't in recovery sometimes want you to sort of come out with there was this epiphany moment, because I think that people are waiting for that moment themselves the whole time. They think you're going to tell a story where everything was great, and then one day, and they always think it's going to be something like, and I saw my child's face, and my child was crying, and I knew then that I had to make. Bollocks. Didn't do it for my children, didn't do it for my wife, did it for myself. I had to take control of my own life in order, by extension, it was to benefit them. But I had to think, well, what do I value in my life? I value my wife and my children and the other relationships and my career. And these are the things that I value that matter to me. Yeah. And therefore, I've got to take control of this thing that is destroying all of those for myself. Yeah. And there wasn't a big moment where it was like a huge rock bottom. It had been going on for, I would say, 2 years. Having been someone who liked to party, like my whole life really, since adolescence, but never, I never perceived myself as having a problem. In my late 30s, there was a couple of solid years where my habits just slowly crept up from being weekend partying to every day of the week to then all times a day to then like mornings too. And I'm talking about booze and coke.
Yeah.
Whilst trying to hold down, be a good family man, hold down a career that had got really overly busy. I think that was a big factor in it. I was overstretching myself tremendously, trying to maintain a sort of a persona of being very sociable and confident and carefree, which was the sort of Jack the Lad persona I'd always had, and it was just too much. But to be honest, I knew for the best part of those 2 years that I had to stop or change. And it was just ongoing. It was attempt after attempt after attempt.
Yeah, countless vain attempts, they say.
And the thing was that all of those attempts failed because I was never quite taking the problem seriously enough. There was always a devil on my shoulder. There was an angel on one shoulder saying, you got to pack this in. This is not good. But there was always the devil on another shoulder going, oh, come off it. It's not that bad. It's not like you're drinking scotch on a park bench. Do you know what I mean? You can get through it. It's just time, and you think, oh, I'll be better once this happens. I used to think when the kids are a bit older and I'm sleeping more, or when I get this work out the way, or whatever. And it was only once I sort of decided to be very accountable to some people and open up and say, actually, this is what I'm doing and it is really bad. Then it was a therapist who I went to see at the Priory, and she was pretty brutal. And she said, if you want to give up and stop for good, we can help you. If you're just looking to cut down, we can't help you. And to be honest, I don't think anyone can, because if someone had invented a way of helping someone who'd crossed that line that you spoke of, successfully cutting down and just going back to being a moderate drinker, or a moderate drug user, she went like, there'd be billionaires. It doesn't exist. Once you cross the line, that option's gone. Yeah. And then I just thought, oh, well, I am an all or nothing sort of person. I've got an addictive personality. So actually, it seemed so much simpler to me once someone had said really directly, your only choice is to give up or carry on. Yeah. It's your choice, but that's it. Don't think there's any in between. And that appealed to me. That sort of spoke to a part of my, like, I could really get behind that kind of unilateral decision. Because, I like that, so I'm like, oh, okay, bang, I'll just stop. Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound easy, because obviously we all know it isn't, but there's always, and it's different for different people. But for me, I remember her saying those words and I was like, that's it, she's right. And after that, I was quite open with people straight away, because I found accountability to be very, very important, because it removes that little back door you've always got. If you don't tell
I've
people,
had that back door.
if you don't tell people that if you do the whole kind of, oh no, it's just for a while, I'm just trying it out sort of routine, then there is no consequence when you just think to yourself one day, fuck this, I'm gonna go to the pub and then I'm gonna call my dealer. There's no consequences. If you've gone around telling everyone, I've got a big problem and I'm stopping for good, then the stakes are much higher when suddenly your wife comes home and you've relapsed. You kind of like, oh, shit, So I found accountability was very important. But so that's a long way of saying there wasn't one moment. There was a number of attempts. And in the end, when someone said to me, it's a bit all or nothing, mate, I chose nothing.
Well,
all.
And it's good because, like, there are so many different journeys, and if you spend 8 years in recovery, you meet a lot of people in recovery, right? We've all spent a lot of time talking to people and who are in recovery, and there's lots of different versions, right? Everyone's story is absolutely different. What I really, if anyone's listening to this, what I got from what you said is that there was a period that was stopping you from being honest because of the success and because of your strength, if you like, what everyone thought you should be like, and maybe your own perception of that stopped you. So there's probably people out there struggling, right? That think, well, A, they've got they're kind of not quite ready, but B, they are they're some of the indicators. I've still got a job. I've still got a job.
I've
just got this new contract. What do you mean? I can't, or I've just got this. I've just won this thing, or I've still got 2 cars on the drive. And I think that I see that a lot, and we see that a lot, is that people don't come in or don't surrender. Sounds a bit dramatic, but they don't stop because they don't look like an
I've got a
alcoholic or
lot
an
of
addict.
people in my life like that, and I can't, and I don't know what you guys do. I try not to offer advice or try to involve myself
I'm
in
the
someone
same.
else's problem
Yeah.
unless they reach out for
Yeah.
it, because I know from my experience that when I was in the depths of my addiction, I was extremely hostile to people offering unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
I was so insecure about myself. But I know people exactly as you describe, and you're right, I was like it. I mean, I thought, well, you know, like I say, I'm not on a park bench here. I'm doing well. And there were certainly times as well, definitely times where I thought, not only is my drinking and drug taking not holding me back, I think it might actually
Help me.
helping me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I get more deals.
in terms of my workload,
Yeah.
right, to be honest, I've written about cocaine and about how actually I don't think, in all honesty, hand on heart, I ever once enjoyed taking cocaine. Certainly not for the last sort of few years. But I thought it was like something that I needed to get through the life I had built for myself in order to play all those roles, dad, husband, and you know, juggling all sorts of different jobs all at once. I thought, well, I need more hours in the day than exist, but cocaine could buy me a few extra hours.
Yeah.
Like, it was mad. And I sort of felt the same way about drink as well.
Yeah.
And so you convince yourself, I actually need this stuff. Other people won't understand, but that's because other people have been hoodwinked by society's conventions. I mean, that was the level of madness in my head. But I think it's quite common to think those thoughts.
Yeah, and also, if you had the life I had, if you had the kind of life I had, then you know, if you had the job I had, or if you had the stress I had, or if you had the, you know, there's so many different. And I love hearing people's version of it, and I love the fact that you're really public about it, and
I'll just jump in here quickly.
yeah, because I was going to come to you because this is like we actually.
It's great because you
jumped out
two are
of
very
your-
very chatty, and it's great. So I'm just going to jump in.
No,
and
I was
think-
going to ask you actually, Ben.
Go
Tell
on,
us
what-
about your moment. Come on, tell us about.
So I'll give you the short version. It was like a gradual plane crashing from about 2012 to 2018. It was just slowly kind of like crashing into a mountain, and my poor ex-wife, she kind of caught the real tail end of it, and we broke up and divorced in 2017, and that was like
the
the
current
trigger.
partner you're with now.
No. That was I'm married again to Ruth, and she's been a big part of my recovery actually, because she sort of like helped me identify I had a problem. She helped me get better, but I was like your classic middle-age crisis trope. I was like divorced, you know, I had a well-paid job, I was drinking too much, I was going out too much, and it just all came apart in 2018. And I ended up in the Priory as well. I did a 28-day program in the Priory and came out in late 2018. Besides a couple of slips after coming out, I've been sober since January 2019, and that's through AA, CA, you know, great sponsors, great people like you that I meet that kind of keep me sober, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the reasons why I was sparked when you and I talked about recovery confidence, Jace, is because you've got people like Sam who are giving this. You're giving a great message, by the way, because you're normalising not drinking, and I think that's getting through to a lot of people. What I see is like in my circles from my industry is kind of like, can we kind of go down a level, which is I would have loved if I was younger, if someone had come in when I was in my late 20s or early 30s and just kind of given like a bit of awareness about what bad habits can lead to. That might have sort of like altered my life path a little bit. I might have taken some action a bit before, but because I had no awareness of it and I was slowly going mad through drink and drugs, I literally crashed the plane into a mountain. And I was thinking, if I could have had someone that could have stepped in earlier and given some awareness in my workplace, I think that would have really helped me. And I think it's starting to shift now as mental health. It's becoming all right to talk about mental health. You know, your book's selling well because people are hungry for that information. How can we start going, okay, mental health is quite a broad topic. How can we look at addiction now and start to try and save some of the younger people that might be struggling? What is it, 10% of the population will suffer with addiction issues?
Well, it's actually, 60% of our workforce right now are drinking above
too much.
The registered, you know, the legal limit, or not legal limit,
the advised
advised
limit.
advised limit. You know, there's a mini pandemic. You know, there's a pandemic happening, and it sounds very dramatic because the word pandemic brings about all the stuff that's happened over the last few years. But you know, unless employers get get clued up.
Yeah.
I think that the thing is, yeah, you're right. Mental health has suddenly become this thing that everyone's chilled about talking, and every company you go into and go, oh yeah, we really want to engage, and that's all very well, but addiction is a word that still carries stigma.
Yeah.
Huge.
To me,
It's just
if
taboo.
you think about addict,
Yeah.
I still think of Nick Cotton in EastEnders,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or Grange Hill.
Or
Addict,
Zamo
crack
in Grange
addict.
Hill,
That's what you think,
right?
crack addict,
You
right?
think crack addict, right?
Yeah.
You think, oh my god, or like if you ever watch The Wire, you think about the characters in that on the
Crackheads
street.
shuffling down the street,
right? And no one wants to hear that. So you go into an office, right? You go into a corporation, and go, oh yeah, great, yeah, depression, anxiety, yeah, we're all about being open about that. Once upon a time, even as recently as 10, 15 years ago, people would have said, oh, depression, we don't want to talk about. None of our staff are depressed. All our staff are happy.
Yeah.
We need them to embrace the idea that their staff may well be addicted. And I've worked in many places in the media, and I'm sure you guys have too, where, to be honest, right, their policy on mental health is bloody encouraging the staff to get pissed, right? They used to say, I've been in senior roles in big organisations where they'd say to me, my bosses would say, how your team getting on? I'd be like, yeah, miserable, whatever, moaning about this, that, and the other. Go, you know what you need to do? You need to get them out for drinks.
Get them out for drinks.
Here, take some budget, right? Take them out somewhere. They love it. If you're taking them out like maybe once a month, sometimes spontaneously, sometimes planned, and making sure everyone gets absolutely trashed,
For a
right?
big binge drink
Then
as well.
morale will go up. So I'm like, I look back, I didn't think this at the time. I look back and I think, so your policy, your HR policy on mental health is to encourage them to unwind through alcohol. You're basically nurturing an addiction. You do understand that in itself is a profound mental illness, right? And you're basically nurturing it. And I think it does tie into the fact that organisations overwork their team. Young people have no idea about where to draw the line on how much they should and shouldn't work. So everyone works more than they should. I'm sure we all did growing up. You work way more than is healthy for you. And your only solution to that, to sort of like soothe the pain of it, the mental, emotional, spiritual pain that you experience from completely overstretching yourself in your career, and especially in the early years, is to basically drink and probably take drugs too, right? That's it. And that is the working culture in this country, and it has been for many years. And so we've made some steps forward by talking about mental health, but we have to really encourage employers to go, listen, understand what addiction is. Understand it's not just crackheads. Understand that there are probably 50% of your team out there, even the young, healthy-looking ones, are drinking way too much and probably doing all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
It's so good to hear. And, you know, when we started this kind of journey of kind of recovery confidence, and it all, you know, came on the back of me helping a few people in the business that I had, and you know, when I hear someone like yourself saying this stuff, it brings the hair up on my back of my head.
Oh, your head.
On my head, yeah.
I was thinking he hasn't got any hair on his head. What's he going to say?
You know, because it really does, because it's and I think we're only, you know, we're only scratching the surface, you know, of what the potential of the conversation, where it could go, you know, because we're talking about the workplace, and you know, we had a catch up before. We had a catch up right before, so you know, you would do that when you're recording something. You have a catch up beforehand, right? And something you said that came up on that, and something where we ended up with it, has taken this to the stratosphere, actually, because stratospherically, you know, this recovery confidence covers, you know, the workplace, and you know, from what you were saying, you know, that employers really do. If we want to have people first organisations, and actually your business runs on the fuel of people, if you're not looking after your people, so there's no. I don't think we do need to convince people about that, but we all agree that, you know, really you have to invest in people properly to really fuel revenue. You know, you think about the short term. And it's what the interview I had with the last guest, you know, so if you really want to have, you know, your short-term problem is that you've got someone who's got addiction problems and you've got to lose them for a little while. And there's a short-term revenue impact for that, right? And the people around them in their team. And that's really a short-term view. Is actually long-term, if your teams are more healthier and they're being looked after more, and you're having policies that are culturally more healthy, you know, then the longer goal, the longer term is you're going to have a more profitable workforce, right?
I'll just jump in. Go on, Jay. Sorry.
No, go on. No.
I was just going to jump in. Actually, one of the reasons why I was fascinated to hear your idea of recovery confidence a couple of months ago, and I won't name any names, but a mate of mine, as part of his recovery in my industry, he did an amend on one of his old bosses, and this guy is an incredible, person. And he was saying that more needs to be done. It's an inclusion issue. Like, if you think about it, so if you're running a sales team, right? I'll tell you now, because I've been in those sales teams. It's the pressure. In fact, Gordon Smart was talking about this on your Reset podcast, but looking at it from a journalist trying to find stories. You have to be out. You have to be basically on the piss. You have to be
100%.
Lunch, drinks, 24, like most nights of the week, right? Because you're enabling other people too, right? So this person who's quite senior in the media industry, and it's great to start to hear it coming through. Like, more needs to be done to think about inclusion of people that might be suffering from addiction issues, or they might have it in store for them in later life. What can we do to educate them? And I think those people, I wouldn't have responded to a HR person just reading from a script and just doing a few slides. I would respond to someone like Sam coming in and giving a talk, or someone that's been there and done it, got the T-shirt and has got the war stories to educate someone. I think it's that inspiration piece which doesn't currently exist, and lots of industries I know of, fashion industry, media industry, whatever, it's actively encouraged to go out, work hard, play hard, and I think it's those industries that we should look at talking to first.
The other thing is, like, remember what it was like when you were at school, right? And when I was at school in the 80s, my school was addled with like problematic drug use, right? It was a hotbed of drug use.
Where were you brought up?
In London, in West London.
West London, yeah.
And then I didn't see it at the time because it just seemed normal. But now I look at my kids actually go to the same school that I went to, right? And it's a different world. So it's the same building, but the names change, and the culture inside the school is like, you just can't believe how much more strict, how much more organised, how much more stable the environment is, right? But people would come and talk to us about drugs, and they'd say stuff like, they'd basically say, drugs are really bad for you. And you'd be sitting there going, yeah, right, I know. We weren't taking them because we thought they were good for us, right? And they go, no, they're really bad for you, and if you take them, you'll probably die or become just a junkie. And we're like, well, that's bollocks, because I've been taking them for ages and I'm not dead. I'm generally having a good time, and I'm not really a junkie. I still am, but I'm kind of all right. That's how you perceive yourself. And it's the same, you're in adulthood now. After the talks you'll get about booze, and you're an intelligent adult, is someone going, you know what it does to your liver, and you know how and you know how it's going to give you cancer, and it's actually as bad as smoking for cancer. And all these things are true, but no one gives a shit because everyone knows this stuff. You never think it's going to be you. It's almost patronising to tell an adult about the health damage as if like they don't know. It's cultural, right? It's cultural. The discussion needs to be about culture change. So it's about positive role models for people who don't drink but are still all the things you think drink gives you. Like, you are fun, you are sociable, right? You are tough, you're resilient, but you have loads of other things that people want but don't have. So you are dynamic and you're extremely energetic, right? And you are sort of comfortable in your own skin, right? So you've got all the stuff that drink gives you plus more. You need to first show that more, right? There's a great writer and therapist who's British, but she lives in America now, and she wrote a book called Soberful, which I can recommend. And she's called Veronica Valley. And her sort of, tagline for her kind of sobriety training that she does is, we're having more fun than you. She even has T-shirts with it on. And I kind of think, I never want to be that smug kind of sober guy who's like, hey, it's someone, look at me with my green juice. I'm having a much better time than you guys who are all wired on coke or like you're on ecstasy. You think, nah, they probably are having fun if they're on ecstasy. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not lie. It can be fun, but draw the line, right? And look at the
ease in the morning.
And is that ease in the morning?
exactly.
No good. But
for breakfast.
not at least wait till the kids have gone to school, right? But like you kind of go, it's not black and white. It's not like we're all boring and depressed and you're all fun, having a great time. There are lots of different options. So anyway, the health thing's just no one cares. Workplace sort of education is often someone coming in and telling them about how addiction's really bad, and they'll always give examples of someone who appears to be much worse than you.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know
some monk.
that
So
you're
basically
sitting
someone's
there.
basically.
All you're thinking is, he's worse than me.
It's not me.
He's worse than me. That's thank God they've given me this extreme example.
Yeah.
Because if they'd given me an example that I could relate to, I'd be worried. But I can't relate to him. He's much worse.
Yeah.
So stop doing that. Normalise addiction. Maybe there needs to be a new word that's not addiction. I don't know.
Yeah.
But provide people with a positive idea of what life that is not so dependent on getting off your face might look like, and then you can shift culture.
But the bit that was that I thought will take this whole journey stratospheric that we got to, and I touched on, is that there's obviously this workplace stuff, right? And that's we spend how long a day working, right? I don't know, whatever it is, we spend 8 hours, 9 hours a day. Depends if you're a nutter and you spend 15 hours a day working. But actually, then when we finish work, we're going to go into, we're going to go football, or we're going to go to the cinema. And, and as a sober person, and I had an example of it today, actually. Someone went somewhere and wanted to get a non-alcoholic drink, right? And they not only did they not have any non-alcoholic drink, but when they went to the bar, the person poured them something that sounded, actually it wasn't in the UK. They poured something Pepsi, and anyway, it ended up that it was a boozy drink. It was it had rum in it, right? So that's, for argument's sake, this drink was something and Coke, and it had rum in it, and it was a noisy bar, and the person poured this, and then she said, no, and she smelt it and said, oh, that's got booze in it, and they went, oh, sorry, okay, poured it out. And then said, "Don't worry, I'll pour this."
So it still had the booze,
and it still had the
glass.
remnants of the booze. And I suppose you wouldn't know as a bar person who is pouring a little bit of Coke into the same glass in a very busy bar. You wouldn't know that could kill someone who's in recovery from addiction. The taste, the euphoric recall. The fact that there's alcohol in the glass, and for me to have a drink, literally, I might as well be putting a gun to my head if I had a drink today, right? So I suppose where I'm going with this is that there's a more awareness in Gen Pop. We call it general population,
right? Yeah,
that's needed, and the phrase that we're coining is sober confidence, as well as recovery confidence. Is that I think Odeon cinemas should be sober confident. I think football stadiums should be sober confident, and that's just basically saying that our staff, even if they've had a half an hour, email that's gone round to the rest of the, to their staff email that says, please be aware that some people might have problems with, or for religious reasons, might not drink alcohol. Yeah. So be careful about the way you. Even that one job, people say, sometimes people say to me, as someone who knows a little bit about addiction in the workplace, say, where do I start? Just start. Just do something, and it could be that your one policy is that you've got, your policy you've got non-alcoholic beer. That's the first policy, and the other one is that we do a little bit of training with our staff. So I've got a roundabout way of saying, what do we think about sober confidence, Ben?
When we were on our Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, because you were telling the story about being at West Ham, and I was at Twickenham, which was very rare. It's the first and probably last time I'll be at
Are you
Twickenham.
a rugger bugger?
No.
I
am not.
For the record,
I am not coming out as a rugger bugger today.
I think it's very brave of you to have told us this.
It's taken me 4 years to pluck up the courage.
I know. You come out about recovery, but then you've actually been open about
this is bigger.
Twickenham. I mean, but this is it.
It's taken me 4 years to pluck up the courage to say I do not like rugby and don't invite me to. No, I was at Twickenham, and they plaster everywhere Guinness Zero, but you couldn't buy it in the bar.
Yeah.
You know, you just couldn't
That's
buy
a
it.
workaround. They do the same at West Ham with Heineken Zero. All the football, Heineken Zero. It's a workaround because you're not allowed to advertise alcohol in stadiums. So they advertise their 0% brands. But if you go to buy it, you
can't get
like half the time they don't know. The bar staff are like, "What are you talking about?" And they'll go out back. Sometimes, if I'm lucky at West Ham, they'll shuffle about.
Yeah.
A
out the
warm,
back,
dusty
and then,
bottle of Heineken Zero.
Exactly. So it's a cynical workaround by these booze brands, which is irritating.
Yeah. But it's, you know, money talks, right? And I think it's a big business. There's a lot of non-alcoholic brands that are being launched. They're selling well. And I think, you know, someone's just got to try and, you know, we're going to try and do it with Recovery Confidence. And hopefully, Sam, you'll be...
Sober Confidence, that's a brand. That's
you know,
a thing
Sober
now.
Confidence,
That's a thing.
Recovery
That's
Confidence.
a thing.
So
It's
not-
official. Sober Confidence is a thing.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got your workplace
Where's
stuff,
my badge?
I'm actually working on the logo
Good.
at the moment.
you know, and we, you know, getting through to people in government that can try and get this trialled out at some of the big stadiums. You
Yeah.
know, if there's, you know, we've got, you know, the Euros, hopefully we'll get in a few years, you know, it could be trialled at something like that. It's going to be a big thing. And, you know, it's business, right? You know, the Diageos of the world and whoever, they can sell a lot. There's a lot of the population are either in recovery or they're religious and don't drink and would want an alternative to just a Pepsi or a 7-Up, which as an adult isn't that attractive.
And there are so many people who are sober curious, and there are so many people when they get to a certain age, they do want to go out and see their mates.
Yeah.
They don't feel that they want to or need to give up alcohol. That's fine, but they don't always. They think if it's still especially when blokes meet up, if it's still always let's go for a pint.
Yeah.
Now I'm less worried about that myself, but I will go to the pub. Not everyone in recovery likes to
some
do
people
that.
are really funny about it.
I will go to the pub and I will usually try to steer any meeting towards a pub that I know will have like a Heineken Zero
Me too.
or whatever.
On draft as well.
Or like
even
sometimes you
better.
get a Lucky Saint on draft, which is great. And I would try and steer it to that. But again, I'm not a stickler. If not, I don't really like sugary drinks. But you know, we have to do that. But there are plenty of people who they're not ready to give up drink. They don't need to give up drink. But there's so many people who would like to be able to go out and meet their mates, but just have something that is non-alcoholic and non-sugary.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's another aspect to it. They're not just relying on the whole population going into recovery or embracing religion. There's a huge number of people in the middle as well. So it is, there is money in this, isn't there?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, and they're bloody expensive, aren't they? The fucking, you know, the bottle of gin, they're like 21
Yeah,
quid
it's
for
over
a
20
bottle of
quid
gin.
for
and
the,
then I could drink the whole. I'd just go like that. I have. If I've ever had one of those, I pour like. But that's how I used to drink. I used to drink pints of vodka. That's
Wow.
That was
Yeah.
my. That was,
But I often think it's interesting you say that because I often think I would last few years of my drinking, it wouldn't cross my mind to ever order a pint of beer. I would probably think in my head, "Oh, that's for civilians." That's what I used to think to myself. Right? I think you have to have. I'll have a pint. But I have to have a large Jameson's with it because if not, it's like I'm just drinking shandy, right? And you just never.
Had a glass of wine with it. Go and have a glass of wine.
Yeah, but then and then that goes up to a triple Jameson's, and then that goes up and goes up and goes up. And you're saying you drank a pint of vodka, which I never got to that level. But I do sometimes think, where would it have ended? Because it escalates very quickly, doesn't it? And yesterday's pint of vodka becomes tomorrow's bottle, doesn't it? And so on and so forth.
I mean, I was taking booze to bed with me.
Wow.
Taking booze to bed with me. I would take a bottle of sherry to bed with me and a can of K cider.
We've got one of our first big meetings tomorrow, haven't we, with the Recovery Confidence?
Yeah,
sort
so
of like
we've been
founding
messing
team.
around with it for about a year and a half.
Finally got everyone together.
Going to get
and,
everyone together, and we're going to kind of, but I do think we've got a massive opportunity. I think I think there is a huge opportunity to educate, but Recovery Confidence is just one piece of it. I do think there's Sober Confidence. I think I think Sober Confidence will be bigger than Recovery Confidence because some people don't want to be in recovery.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely,
so Sober Confidence actually I think could be bigger.
I agree. Yeah.
It could be bigger. It could be the more mainstream. It's those sober curious people who don't. Well, I'm not in recovery. I'm not addict. I'm not alcoholic. There are going to be loads of people who don't like the word addict, alcoholic, recovery, and so a more not diluted but a more accessible version.
It's about a cultural shift, and those things tend to happen quite slowly.
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter. You just got to start pushing in the right direction. We don't, we're certainly not, we're not the Temperance League going right. We want everyone to be sober. But if you can just push culture in a way that people are more and more confident about, if they do want to get sober, they're more confident they can do that without any stigma, right? And if they don't want to get sober, but they just feel sometimes that they don't want to drink alcohol is not going to be part of every single social interaction they ever have.
Yeah.
They're confident to do that too. And, remove stigma and make it seem positive. I think that's really doable. And I think, the idea of, sober confident is such a brilliant idea. And I think that's the direction that you're going to push things in. I think it's fantastic.
And this is the truth, is that I genuinely was one of those guys that thought that booze and drugs was just part and parcel of my...
Work hard, play hard, wasn't it?
It was just part and
That was
parcel.
the culture.
It was I wasn't even one of the, it was just really normal.
Yeah,
it
just
was
normal.
just really normal. It was, and I knew I was in trouble for years, but, and I, I've got business partners that have known me. One particular business partner who's known me, he was actually my MD when I was really active and really unwell. But he hired me while he hired me back in 2012, 2011. He hired me, and then he ended up being chairman of Citrus Orange, which was the business that hired people in recovery. And he came on and was our non-exec chairman, Ian. And Ian Woolley's been amazing. But he remembers the guy before, and he, even though I was really good at selling, I was really good at business development, I was hired because I was really good at that. My capability and my the way I apply myself and my memory and the way I conduct everything about me is like a billion times better being sober. So for those people that think that they're going to be losing something, you get so much.
Yeah,
how much stuff. I've written a book since I've been sober. Launching podcasts. I talked about that book for 30 years. 30 years I had that idea of that book. So, you kind of want to just give this to people who you think might need it. Want to just go, look, it's so amazing, and there are some people that would probably afraid to open up and to let go or to be honest or stop drinking and using.
And here's the thing: you don't, I think like things like AA, there can be a perception that it's. You used the phrase when we spoke last time that it can be quite militant, and I think there's other solutions for other people, right? I don't think for some people they need to go into the 12-step program. Anyone that's read Russell Brand's book is a really good example of someone that he was on his knees. He had to go to a recovery. I think he did like 3 months in a recovery centre, to rid himself of alcohol, heroin, crack cocaine, that
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff, that is like intense, medical intervention, psychological intervention. But there are people that aren't at that stage that would just probably benefit from like a lighter touch. Talking to someone like me privately and opening up and just saying, I think I'm on like a bit of a slippery slope here. I'm drinking every day. I'm probably doing 2 or 3 grams of coke a week. I'm running out of money by the end of the month. I'm racking up credit card bills. You can intervene at that point. You don't have to throw the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous at them.
Yeah,
but you can probably just be a bit of a mentor and put your arm around them and go, do you know what? Try and have a week off. And if you can't have a week off, then
come and see me.
Then come and see me. Do you know what I mean?
It is about hitting people early. It really is. It is. And if a sober confidence, because it sounds like actually recovery confidence is for people who are, it's to give employers the tools for people who are in recovery, right? So they kind of, we need HR practices and tools and a cultural shift that enables, workplaces to be able to help people who are at that stage. But sober confidence, that's just kind of, enabling people to kind of have choices if they don't fancy drinking, and they don't feel pressured, basically, and they don't feel pressured, and that there's alternative ways of having fun, and that you don't look like a leper if you walk into a pub or you walk into an event and you say, no, I'm not drinking. why not? You know, there's such a stigma.
Yeah.
I imagine that's harder as well because, like, going back to what I said earlier, that I really embraced the unilateral decision of saying I don't drink.
Yeah.
And I carry my sobriety with quite a lot of confidence. I'm almost on the front foot about it. Do you know what I mean? But I understand not everyone can be that way or feels that way. But, you know, like, I went to Seville, West Ham last year in the Europa League. And me and my mates went, and that's a big away day. Like, it's like, you know, thousands of West Ham fans going across Europe, planes, trains, and automobiles, and everyone is proper on the pitch. It's a big party, right? And I've done things like that in the past, and I'd have been very much right in the heart of it. And I did wonder, how's this going to play? Because I was with my best mate, and he was going to be drinking all the way. Like, there'd be no discussion about that. You know, he wasn't making a concession. I wouldn't ask him to. But you're on the train, there's a bunch of lads and they're going mental. And I used to think, can I only handle this because I'm off my face? If I wasn't off my face, would I find this intimidating, just annoying, depressing, whatever? I didn't know how I'd respond. But I was on this train and we were going from Madrid to Seville. And a bunch of right meatheads are like, sit with us. I didn't know them, but there was a spare seat and they could see me swerving it. And they were a bit like, why don't you sit with us, mate? And I just went, lads, no offence, but you're all on the piss.
Yeah.
I said, and I need a kip. So I'm going to go back there and sleep and leave you lot to it. And they go, oh, all right. Why? And they said, why aren't you drinking? And I went, why aren't I drinking? And they go, yeah. And they're almost a bit like in my face about it. And I went, because I was a fucking alcoholic and cokehead, mate. Yeah. And so I had to knock it on the end. And I went, oh, well, fair play to you.
Yeah. My mate Dave.
And I found that much, and people respond much easier to you saying, you going in quite hard, 2-footed, like that. Then if I've gone, I'm not drinking, why not? Just trying to cut down, right?
Yeah.
And people give you more shit about that.
They do, yeah.
And that's... People don't give me shit about being sober. I mean, I can think of about 2 times in my life. One of them happened just around the corner from here. It was quite a painful memory where someone's really like got stuck into me. Why? Tell me why. Tell me why, blah, 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 and won't let it go. And you're like, you know, it's really out of order. But that's so rare. Like everyone's just supportive, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel bad for people who are not going to... They're not as extreme. They're not saying I'm giving up because I'm an addict. They're just trying to not drink. That, in my opinion, that has more stigma now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's much harder.
Painful. Imagine, I mean, my, you say train wreck,
Plane crash.
Plane crash. Mine was a long, slow train wreck.
Yeah.
And that was the analogy I used. And I hit, you know, I went right down, but I can just imagine, you know, and I know people, they just spend like 25 years just going.
You don't even
getting,
notice it's
more
happening.
Ill,
That's the thing.
Going, and then they just die young.
People,
but listen,
when you say, sorry, just one last thing. When people say you don't notice it happening, that is the thing. That goes back to what I said earlier. People always want you to say that there was an epiphany. And they always want to be, I don't know if you used to watch Mad Men, but obviously Mad Men, to me, now watching it now, I realise really it's just a really long, very detailed, pretty authentic study in alcoholism.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I think. That's what I think the show's about. That's what I think the show's about. Like everyone thinks about this, that, and the other. Yeah, and people go, "Oh, the suits are great, and the women are so stylish." You go, "No, this is about modern. This is about the birth of modern addiction, and how the workplace and work practices nurture addiction in people, and the mental illness side of that is disguised by a veneer of capitalism and success, right? And that kind of is almost there to tell you it's all right. You're not mentally ill. You're not dying. Everything's great. But we see the protagonist and loads of others basically descend into a pretty depressing state. Like, I think there's a scene where Don Draper, like, turns up at a funeral and he's so drunk that he throws up at the funeral. But there's another one where one of the older guys is sitting in a meeting, and he just suddenly pisses his pants out of the blue, right? And everyone's like, oh, my God. And next thing you know, he's carted off to some sort of archaic rehab facility. And in a way, although I think Mad Men does a pretty good portrayal of addiction, scenes like that are what people are waiting for as their sign from God. And let me tell you, if you're listening to this and you've been thinking to yourself, do I need to address my drinking? Don't wait to piss yourself in a meeting. You probably won't with any luck. I never did, right? By the grace of God. It's not, you're not going to always get that big sign you're waiting for. I always say to people, if you continually promise yourself when you wake up in the morning that you're not going to drink that day, but then you always end up drinking anyway, and then you feel shit about it, then you've got a drink problem.
Yeah.
Do something about it.
Yeah,
Just
amazing.
use that as your criteria.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And listen, I am so grateful. I think we could talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
I really think we
Sam's
could.
got to get his car though.
Yeah,
And my
yeah.
wig.
Yeah.
I've got to go and buy a wig.
Yeah.
He's got to buy a
I'll
blonde
explain
wig.
off air.
But we basically, and we didn't even talk about you've come down into Brighton. You're at Comedia tonight, and this is gonna go out way after. How long is it gonna be at Comedia? Because it's gonna be after. I mean,
We're just doing one night. We're
One
on
night.
tour around the
Okay.
country.
Around the country,
Yeah, but
so-
by the time this comes out, it'll probably be over. If you want me to plug something, though, I'll plug
Plug
my
something, go
book,
on.
which is Sort Your Head Out, Mental Health Out the Bollocks, which is out now, and it's based on my Substack, which is The Reset, which you find at samdelaney.substack.com.
Thank you, and Ben, thanks so much. Can you this wouldn't have happened without you getting
Wow.
involved?
Yeah, no, it's great, and thanks for responding, Sam. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into recovery confident and sober confident with you, Jace. So
amazing.
start of a great journey, hopefully.
I think it is a start
Yeah.
of an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And Matt, thank you, Matt Cotton in the background. I'm going to give Matt, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
At Disruptive Media, and have just done an amazing job. Even though I told him that there was only 2 people and then there was 3, so he's
Yeah.
probably hating me. And but no, he's shaking his head. But no, really grateful. We've covered lots, and I don't know, if this is going to be the 3rd, 4th, because we've got quite a few in succession now. So it's the 3rd recording. By the time this comes out, who knows? But I'm really, really grateful. We've talked about some amazing subjects. Thank you for spending some time here, Sam.
I'm grateful too. It's really great to meet you both and have
Yeah.
such a brilliant conversation.
Thanks, Sam.
We did, and we talked about what I love is we talked about the work stuff, like your book at the end. It's like we're really passionate about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because you kind of want to give it away. You do. I wish I could give this stuff to people. I really wish. I wish I could bottle it. Because of the great things that have happened to me since I've got sober. My life has been totally transformed. And I just So to have people like yourself come on, I feel really blessed and really grateful. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason.
Cheers.
Cheers, Jason.